I have to ask you a question then.
Sure.
Are you an atheist?
What do you mean by atheist?
One who believes that there is no God.
What do you mean by God?
I'll tell you exactly. A creator who, with intelligence, who is aware of his creation.
This is a scientific question. Was the universe created, or was it always here?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to answer this is through science. We don't have the answer yet.
So where do you think the evidence leads? You look at a baby born and you say, Mother Nature is amazing, or there might be a God.
I've had 5, and I think it's great, and I never had for a moment the thought, God intervened to make this baby. Let me ask you a question about that, by the way. If God is omnipotent and omniscient,
yes,
why is it necessary for God to be meddling in the universe after he made it? Why didn't he make it right in the first place so it would go in the direction he wanted?
Because there would be no need for us then. If the world were perfect, then we could not exist because we could have no freedom of choice to do bad. We couldn't choose anything imperfect.
This is a very egocentric
Not
point
egocentric.
of view. That the point of the world is so that we will do good or bad.
That's right.
Now, let me tell you a
Without
fact.
humanity, I don't think there's a point to the universe.
Let me now argue about that. A lot of people like that idea, right? It's satisfying.
No,
wait. Let me make a remark. It's satisfying. We're at the center. We're important. We're the reason the universe was made. Feels good, right? Now, let's think of where we are. We live on a tiny world in a solar system which has about 70 or 80 big worlds going around the sun, which is an obscure star in an obscure spiral arm of a humdrum galaxy that contains 400 billion stars, and this Milky Way galaxy is one of about 100 billion galaxies. Now imagine that number of places, and in this obscure galaxy, in that tiny star, that little planet, those guys think they're the center of the universe. It's hilarious.
That's a baby. Oh boy. Hello guys, David Vos here. Wow, it's another summer day. I mean, it was in the 83 or 4 degrees yesterday. Very, very odd because it's much warmer than normal. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Because I find so many reasons to be happy and filled with joy. I have seen some things in the last, I don't know how many weeks, and every day gets a little brighter. Even though my faith has always carried me through, and I've always felt purpose, and I've always felt a need to carry on, and a knowing. Now, some of you may think, oh, you were just trained that way. Those sociopaths, that cult you were in, they taught you to believe like that, and you just can't break free. Well, I agree people are brainwashed, but it's really the opposite. I was brainwashed, like you, like all the rest. You atheists were brainwashed into that religion. But now I'm free. You see, the religion I was taught, and most of the other Christian religions, and Islamic and Judaism and all the other religions in the world, today, not because of their scriptures and what their prophets taught, what the inspired scriptures teach, but because human beings have denied Jesus Christ and crucified him when he was here. I mean, the Romans didn't stop it, even if they tried to wash their hands of it. And the Jews did it because they insisted upon it, even though they were given many opportunities to pick somebody else or just don't do it. And I don't know if you are picking up on this, and I think very few people do. But what Christ went through on the cross, he went through as a representative for all of us. In other words, what you see him experiencing is what we all have experienced. And it doesn't matter. The law is the reason we all gotta die. It doesn't look fair, though, does it? Not from the story of the New Testament. Not when we see the story of how Jesus was crucified, we say, wait a minute, that's not fair. He taught love. He was a good man. He healed people. Oh, yeah, but Dave, he broke the law. In fact, he didn't even worship Yahweh. He refused to bow down to him in the 40 days in the wilderness. He said, bow down to me, I'll give you all these kingdoms. And Jesus said, no. Exactly the same thing happened to Israel in the 40 years in the wilderness that were told they had to bow down to Yahweh, and they all did it. They got down and did it on their knees. And this Yahweh wasn't appeased by it at all. In fact, that just made him angrier, right? I won't pardon your sins unto the third and the fourth generation. Blah, 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 blah. I hate you. I curse you, and you're cursed, and you're cursed. And oh boy, you picked up some sticks on the holy day. So now we got to burn you alive, okay, and open up the ground and swallow you up into the abyss. Okay, in his wrath he came down, and he swore in his wrath, you'll not enter into my rest. Ho, 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 ho. And we're like, yay, really? Okay, so this is a very serious situation. This angry deity is killing everybody. And if you want to know what that looks like, just take a look at the gospel, where Jesus went to the cross because of what? Because of this angry law and mob violence, because of you idiots believing in atheism. Oh, it don't matter. We can kill him. That woman broke the law, right? She committed adultery. Oh, yuck. We've got to stone her. What? There's something inside you. In that moment, you should have known, you hypocrite. Jesus said, you who is without sin, pick up the first stone. Well, none of them had the balls to do that, did they? Because you see, as Jesus said, in your little system, you're all dead. You're done because you got an eye for an eye, and it's an eternal, vicious loop of death, and you've partaken of a covenant of death. And now you're going to kill me, and I'm going to let you. Why? Because all of us, we have no authority in this world. Even the Son of God, right? The Son of God is here. And he had to go through this and withstand the vengeance of this character called the I Am Vengeance. Why? Same reason you got to do it. Nobody really knows, but everybody knows it ain't right. Right now, the law says we've got to stone him. But everybody knew it was wrong, and yet they went against their own conscience and they murdered Jesus Christ. And that is a story about how evil the wicked governments of this world is, and how atheism, or believing in this deity who's not love, who has no purpose, but just wants you to die, who supposedly is not almighty, but creates everything in this form, in this earthly dust form, and has vengeance and hate. Well, that sounds like an illusion. That sounds like something, it's a figment of your own imagination that they couldn't let go of. You need a pacifier. You want a God, right? To blame all your troubles on. And what is that? Science? Science is your God. Vengeance, power, strength, the government, the consensus, which is there because people want to get ahead and make excuses, and they murder one another, and they know it's wrong. They follow a deity that came along second. You should have followed the light, the truth, but you didn't like the truth. You didn't like love and kindness. You wanted vengeance, and you got it. And so what's going on here is that we chose at the mountain, and we chose at the cross. Now, not everybody chose the same thing. There's some of them that were standing here weeping, and they went to the cross with him. And Jesus told them, you're going to have to take up your cross and follow me. Why? Why are we here? Well, because this angry deity that's inside of you that you won't stop worshiping, you won't stop believing, the one who says you got to die, but this makes no sense. Everybody can see it when they see it written in the gospel. Wait a minute, Dave. Okay, he committed blasphemy, but what if he's right when he said your deity's the devil? I ain't gonna worship him. What kind of a deity? You ask for bread, he gives you serpents. What? What kind of a deity brings fire down from heaven and kills 30,000 people in one day? 23,000 people that the Apostle Paul calls Apollyon, the destroyer. What in the world are you doing? You say, well, we've got to believe in God. No, you didn't believe in the first deity, who was light, who was the truth. You believed in the second one. Your God is science, is law, is government, and we've got to follow it. You see, it's always been the same question. Do we believe in, not God? There's a modern word that is confusing everybody, because this God is the very government, law, science, vengeance that you think you must obey, that it's somehow logical because he created all the physical things. Well, Yahweh created and formed everything from the dust. But that's the lower ego. And you're so confused that you're trying to prove that there is a God by trying to prove that government and laws and the Moses and all this is real. That it's good, because how else is he going to judge the world if he doesn't murder your little hide? How else can he be righteous if he lets you, a wicked, evil, wicked little scumbag, even breathe? He's got to be righteous, and therefore you got to die. You ain't worthy, buddy. The problem is that that's faulty logic, and you haven't had any eyes to see or ears to hear up until now, because you've been listening to the false prophets, to the world, to your lower ego, your excuses. We've got to kill him. Why? We can't allow murderers. Jesus didn't murder anybody. You're the one doing the murdering. Well, he wouldn't listen to the deity who said, thou shalt not murder. And as a subnote, you shall murder everybody I don't like, right? Genocide them all and make them slaves. That way, they'll obey me, because we've got to do the truth. Only the truth that you're accepting is the lie. And this is the story from Exodus to the gospel. We see the same story, but you can't see the story. Your eyes don't fill up with tears. You say, good, crucify him. Yahweh, kill those people over there picking up sticks. Make the earth swallow them up in fire and brimstone. We want vengeance. That's what you believe. But you didn't get the point when you were there that day. About 4,300 years ago. That's my estimate. Not in accord with, science or biblical studies today, but about 4,300 years ago, we were all standing there in a place called Babylon, and this law was made by Moses, Naram Sin, with the two horns, and he says, I am God and there is none else, and you will bow down and worship to me. Why? Well, because we've got to have government, and I'll punish you if you don't. So right away, the people were scared of being punished, so they're like, okay, we believe, and they bowed down. But the truth that was staring them in the face, that shone down from heaven every day when the sun came up, the love, the bird flying down on a branch, you didn't see that. You ignored it. You didn't hear your heart. You didn't have patience. That's a good thing. That's a virtue. You should have sat in a corner somewhere and waited, made your decision after you listened and learned something and heard the still, small voice of truth. But you got distracted by the clamor, by the ground opening up, by the thunderous voice and the thick gloom and the darkness. You got scared. He's got horns. We don't want to die. He must be the truth. And you just convince yourself that you believed in an eye for an eye and vengeance. Because vengeance, you were afraid, was real. You were afraid this God with horns was real. What are you running around thinking that the devil's real, but Jesus ain't? Ha 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 ha. Jesus is a myth, Dave, but the devil, he's real. Be scared. Do what the government says. They have authority, right? They worship Yahweh. So you see, you're being fooled. You're worshiping your belly. You're afraid. You won't stand up for the truth. You don't open your eyes and look at the story. The story is you should have accepted Mount Horeb. You should have accepted the light. You should have accepted the grace. But you didn't. You demanded the vengeance. And when Christ was here on this earth and he said, I love you, you said, get out of here, you silly little man. Why we don't like you? I love you. Oh, what an evil man. Bow down and worship, or we'll kill you. And they did. They murdered him and all of those who would believe him. But guess what? Those who believe the truth, and they know they cannot die, and they are Elohim, and they understand the fear that you're going through. They know why you did it. You're deceived, and the entire world is deceived. And this guy on the clip, I forget his name right now, famous scientist back in the 60s or something. He was this guy that the government put out there for people to listen to because he was a good speaker and he had great parables, and he told you why there's no God. Why? The first thing he said was, well, the universe might have been here all along forever. Well, okay, but what is the universe? You see, they already worked this out a long time ago. It's called the Trinity: the Father, the Son, and the Mother. Mother matter and the Sky Father. Heaven and earth, male and female, negative and positive is what makes everything. So it's a continuous thing. There is no time and space. The universe exists as the Son, the Logos, the plan that's born from the Mother and the Father, which is the two things that you have to have for existence, is the thinker and the observer, right? You've got to have the mind that thinks, and then somebody conscious and aware who learns from what you're thinking. So the universe can't be more than one, because that what is one thing, and every other thing is within the one. So there can only be one universe, and that is the divine being. But what is the divine being? What is the universe? It is made up of purpose. There is a plan. The child, the Son of Man, human beings, they are the ones who were the crown of creation, which that word means manifestation of the source, of the purpose, of the divine love. There is a purpose. You should have seen that and felt it in your heart. At least you should have seen it in the parable at Sinai, or when Jesus came himself and demonstrated it for you. You should have said, I love Jesus. I believe Jesus. I'm not going to follow the law or the government anymore. I'm going to forgive one another. But you didn't do that. You did just like they did with Moses, and you followed what? The law. And those Judeans, they were sneaky. They kept trying to write false translations, and then they ended up building Hollywood to do a little tap dance every morning on your living room television set. Da 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 da. Bow. Dun 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 dun. Here comes a movie star. Oh my goodness. Ava Gardner with Cary Grant. Oh wow, they're important. Look at them, they're smoking. And dark coats and dark alleys, and they're always gangsters, or they're shoot 'em ups, or some romance, which is really a story of somebody cheating on somebody. And what was the morals of this? That we're all sinners? That it's a dark plight of the soul? But it was exciting anyway for you, right? You enjoyed it. Well, the adventure is enjoying. The problem is you never, I guess, willingly ever get to the point. that the entire movie is a demonstration of this life, which is nonsense. You're striving after the beautiful Ava Gardner, right? She was one of the top 20 all-time movie stars, and most of you today probably never even heard of her. Think about it. Go back and look at a picture of her. Ava. Kind of like Jaja, Ava Gabor. Well, this is Ava Gardner. And she looks identical. Lady Gaga, right? They all look the same, right? They're still there in the little tap dance. They're little jesters up there, trying to convince you what? Of how drab the universe and how evil it is. Therefore, you've got to have government to come in and save you. This is what we've been presented time after time. The deity of atheism, the deity of hate, vengeance, death. You take a ring, cut it somewhere in the circle, and now it's got an end and a beginning. Right? If you don't cut it, it's an eternal circle. And that's what life is, an eternal circle, forever. We don't have to be afraid of death. Death is not a character that we need to be afraid of, but you're afraid of death. But not really. You know deep down that there is a deity of love. You know that there is purpose. You know in your heart that there's such a thing as right and wrong, good and evil. And good and evil is a thing that is from mind and being and promotes happiness, truth. You know about all these things. It's as plain as the nose on your face, but you would deny it and say, well, maybe there is no purpose. Maybe there is no love. It's not fair that you take that child that was born into an evil world and you abuse it and beat that child and you starve that child and you rape that child and you tell that child that they're worthless from the time they're born. You leave it out in the street to fend for itself. It gets on drugs, the child, and it ends up in prison, and the cycle of abuse goes on and on because of your laws, because of your deity that you've chosen, which is government, which is science, which is Judaism, which is a liar. And he was a liar from the beginning when he told Eve, don't partake of the knowledge of good and evil to become like deity, like me. I'll throw you right out of here, woman. You ain't getting that tree of life. You're not living forever. You're not even going to be smart like me because I am God and there is none else. Now get down and worship me. And Eve's like, oh, well, the tree looks good for food and its fruit to make one wise. Well, that's what the serpent told me. Well, that's what Jesus told us. This means eternal life, taking in gnosis, knowledge from the tree of knowledge to become like God, knowing good and evil. And then Jesus said, hey, you know that deity that told you couldn't have knowledge and you couldn't become like deity, to become like deity, and you couldn't have the tree of life, and he kicked you out and he cursed you? Well, I removed the curse. I love you. My Father is above, your Father is beneath. He's a murderer, but I love you. You go tell everybody my Father loves you. Everybody equally. Forgive everybody. It's over. Jesus stood right there and looked at them and said, ye are the Elohim, but you'll all die like men. But ye are the Elohim. Well, who's the Elohim, Dave? Well, let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, it was not so, Jesus said to the Pharisees about Moses' law. He brought the law, but I brought the truth. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Well, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, Elohim. But Jesus just said, we're the Elohim. But Elohim said, let us make man for our form. Now, who formed man? It was Yahweh. In Genesis chapter 2. Pay attention. The lower ego forms us through experience, knowing good and evil, going through the maze. Jesus said the same thing the serpent said. You've got to have knowledge to become formed. You've got to be formed by the decisions you make from your lower instinctual nature and learn by the things in which you suffer, that you might learn what is good and what is bad to become like deity. And then that knowledge will give you the ability to reach your hand out and partake of the tree of life. And it was Jesus himself that offered us the tree of life. And how did he do it? He says, I'm the tree of life. Right? Anyone who believes in me will never die. I eat my flesh and drink my blood. Right? What is this, all of this symbology? This bread, break it. It means my body that's broken for you. Do you understand the lower serpent that died on that cross died for you. You got to get rid of that illusion, the illusion of the fleshly nature that is cursed by that lower ego. Your flesh has been cursed by your lower ego. It's a liar. It's not really cursed. You're being deceived. Wake up. Jesus flew off that cross with wings. He didn't believe in the devil. He didn't worship the lower form of government and the law. He told you to love one another. He said there's another way. And the point is here is that this Carl Sagan guy is either one of the most ridiculously stupid people that I've ever met. And I say that because he did so much thinking about this before he spoke. He spent his life, and in that picture, or in that little video clip, he looks like he's in his 50s or maybe 60. So he spent his whole life thinking about this. And just like most of you who read the Gospels and don't notice that Jesus said, love one another, all you can think about is, we've got to worship the God who killed Jesus, right? That's our Father. We've all got to die. We're bad. He hates us. No, Jesus said, listen, you're not looking at this thing right. And this man, Carl Sagan, either was purposefully deceiving you, again, another Moses, or he's stupid. And maybe you're all stupid if you think that y'all don't know deep down inside yourself that you shouldn't have left the Mount of Horeb. You should have embraced the light, but you didn't. You started worshiping a golden calf. Ignorant law and this stupidity that Carl Sagan's going on about. Like, we're on a speck of dust spinning around 66,000 miles an hour, going around another little speck of dust in a swirling vortex of dust in an infinite vacuum of nothing. And in this vacuum of infinite nothing and darkness are all these little insignificant specks or worlds. There's so many of them that, how dare you believe that you are important, you ignorant humans? Well, it sounds like it's Yahweh now. We're going back to the Old Testament. Old Carl Sagan, he's Moses, right? Vengeance is mine, saith Carl Sagan, right? You've got to believe in me. I'm the government, which is death. That's the God you worship. Science. There's no God of love, you foolish man. We got to kill you now. Sacrifice you on the altar of ignorance and worship this crazy, shouting, angry being screaming at us from the top of some mountain in thick gloom and darkness, and fire shot up and vengeance. And he wanted to kill everybody. Well, you all deserved it, he said. And Moses said, oh, Lord, please don't kill them all. What about your reputation? All the nations saw you draw us from Egypt and bring us out here in the desert to die. And they're going to say that you're nothing. You couldn't even save your own people. You don't want that, Lord. And Yahweh's like, maybe you're right. I do have a reputation here. Okay, I'll save you guys and I'll just torture you, right? That's what I'll do. I won't kill you right away. I'll just torture you. I'll put you under my law. You'll do what I say or you'll die. And we'll just kill you one by one until we get down to this man, Jesus. We'll kill him, but, it'll be a big spectacle. Everybody will have to, then they'll know and realize that I'm a fake. That the truth is that you guys don't deserve it. Here's the Son of Man, right? What? Who's the Son of Man? That's us. Jesus did in a picture what all of us are doing. We're all dying because of the choices that our lower ego is making, and we are blinded. We need to wake up and realize there is not a God, an angry Yahweh who threatens to murder us. That's just our figment of imagination in our stupidity. That's the lie. He's the liar. He's the deceiver. What are you doing? What are you worshiping? You're worshiping your belly. You're ignorant. You're fools. This is the covenant that came from within you. You demanded the vengeance. You're all hypocrites. Wake up. Open your eyes. There's a purpose. That woman that you're destroying? What about the man? Did he not do anything wrong? Were you not interested in killing him too? Why does your scripture in Exodus 21:7 say that a father will take his daughter and sell her and she will never go free? Ever. You'll put a ring on her and say, that's my property. And then I want you to go around in the earth and divide it up for sale. This is my property. That's your property. You get on my property, I got a right to shoot you. Right? Stay off my property. Right? Posted. No trespassing. I'm the owner. Oh, yeah, that's the word master, right? Everybody used to get their jollies off of that word back in the day, right? I'm your master. But not Jesus. They kept saying to Jesus, oh, master, oh, master. What did Jesus say? Well, he says, technically I am teaching you. And you guys are learning, and without me, you're not going to make it because you're not aware of what I need to tell you. However, you are not my servants. And I am not your master. It may look that way, but a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. But I have told you everything, all things that I do. I call you my friends. I'm not your master. Now, yeah, he is our master because, that's the part that you've got to be able to discern. He doesn't demand that you call him master. But I call him my master because I love him out of a true knowing. Because my eyes are open and I love him and I care for him as my elder brother and I die for him and he died for me. Do you understand? But we're not required. We don't get executed if we don't know what's going on. We didn't bow when the king walked through the door, right? This is not how it works anymore. We love one another. We follow our elders, yes. We respect them, yes, but we're all one. And the head cannot say unto the toe, I have no need of thee. So what am I saying? I'm saying that, and I'm going to make a brief little statement here. Carl Sagan was correct. Well, not really. He said that the universe could have been here forever. We don't know. But I tell you it has to be here forever, and I will give you the proof of that. That which is cannot come from that which is not. Therefore, there could not have been a time when there was nothing and now there's something. The proof is that there is something. You're seeing it. You're thinking it. You are it. So there is the first principle. Something doesn't come from nothing. You can't get one, the numeral 2, the numeral 3, any quantity at all, any variable does not come from zero. Do you understand, Carl Sagan? Or are you an idiot? So you said science couldn't prove that the universe has always been here. You're a liar. Well, maybe you're just stupid. Because science, I thought math was part of science. And math says that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, whatever, all the numbers, any variable, does not come from zero. So therefore, what you see is by virtue of itself, neither created nor will it have an end. Now, here's the other thing. What is it that you see? What is it that is? Well, what is a very ordered, purposeful existence of humans growing and learning and attaining and being exalted, getting our white robes and our wings and our crowns and flying off to yonder other adventures because we have a purpose. We love one another. We know what is right from wrong. That's the reason we're here, to learn what's right and wrong, what's good and evil. That means purpose. You are too stupid, Carl Sagan, to get the meaning of the parable, or the parable that Jesus played out when he came to the earth and died for you so that you would wake up there. But you didn't accept the gospel, oh Carl. Right, oh horned one? You demanded vengeance because you couldn't believe in the light. The truth. Love one another. The universe is forever. No worries. We love you. We all love each other. Ye are the Elohim, and the scripture cannot be broken, son. But not just scriptures. We don't just go by scriptures because somebody wrote scriptures. We've got a Bible. Oh, we've got a Bible, No, what does the Bible say? That's why we like the Bible, because it speaks of eternal life. When the disciples were about ready to leave Jesus because of some things that he was saying and they didn't understand, and the crowds were standing around and they were all about to leave because they didn't understand. And Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "Are you going to leave? You going to leave with them?" And Peter, he said, "No, Lord, I don't understand everything you're saying, but I feel it in my heart." Right? Jesus said, "Who do you say I am?" He says, "I know that you are the Son of God." Well, in other words, he was saying, "I am the Son of God." Remember on the road to Emmaus, their eyes were opened and they recognized him in their midst. Within themselves, they finally recognized that Christ in you, the hope of glory, and their eyes were opened. A little bit like Adam and Eve, they ate from the fruit of knowledge and their eyes were opened. We've got to have this, guys. But your leader, Carl Sagan, has deceived you and given you a false option, making you think that, well, you have to believe in some God that's really a devil, or you're not, that's not God. See, if you believe in a God of love and a universe that's always been here, we're all part of it, and we're all one divine being, and we respect our elders, our father and our mother and our elder brother, and they're coming to save us because that's what families do. You can't believe in that. Why, that's ridiculous. Right? So what do you believe? Well, you don't believe in God, Dave. Okay. But you're receiving God. That's what they did at Mount Sinai. They rejected the light and received God, Yahweh, who said, "I'm God, there is none else. Bow down to me." They received it. So Carl Sagan is the biggest fool because he's either deceived, all the Judeans are deceived. They're in a cult just like my JW family that's all blind and think they've done God's service by destroying and murdering me. Why? Off with his head. Why? Well, I don't know. Maybe I did something they didn't like. Right? Their God don't like it. What did I do? Well, I didn't believe in him. I don't jump when they say jump. I don't say how high, And they didn't like that at all. Why? You're not following the law, right? Don't you know that God is just dynamic energy, Dave? He's not love. He doesn't forgive you. He can't. He's bound by his own vengeance. And the only way you're going to get through this is if you, what? Give up all of your free will and stop even thinking for yourself and just do what you're told. And believe that he will kill you any minute. Guarantee it. Well, that is science. That's the government. That's what Carl Sagan believes. There is no purpose. There's no love. There is no eternal life. You've got to accept our deity, atheism, Yahweh, law and order, government. What a fool. And I hope you're not fooled by it too, my brothers and my sisters. Now, I see this everywhere in all kinds of ways. For instance, I was scrolling last night and I, had my phone and I was looking at comments in my YouTube channel and so forth. And then I clicked off of that and boop, out popped Josh of the Sons of God Ministry. And he's doing a live. And I didn't mean to, go in there. I wasn't going to, on his show, start arguing with him. So I wasn't there for that. But I listened for a minute as I was passing, and he was going over a lot of things we've been talking about. And I think he's been thinking these things over, and he's taken what I've said, or maybe he's done his own research, probably, as well. And he's said, okay, the Bible's all made up then, Dave. That Ezra guy you said that compiled the Elohist and the Yahwist documents, and now it's all a big mess, and it's not real, it's not true. Well, here's what you're doing, just a little bit like Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan's got his math problem backwards. He wants to know what 4 and 4 is, right? And so instead of going 4 plus 4, he goes 4 times 4, and he's trying to figure out what 4 plus 4 is by mixing up the plus and the times symbol. multiplication, you've got to understand that's not addition. So your equation's incorrect. So when you look at the Old Testament and you see some priests that wrote about Yahweh, and you see other priests that wrote about Elohim, and you notice that this nation is called the nation of Israel, and when it's split up, it's the 10 tribes, the northern kingdoms, and the Jewish tribes, and there's a breach, and you say, well, you see, they can't be true. They're liars because they fell apart. They sinned and they wrote lies. Well, they did translate it improperly, but here's the thing. What that is a parable about how the wholeness of the unity was split. And the lower half, the Judean southern kingdom, is your lower instinctual nature. The ego, the lower ego, it's deceiving you. So that book is not some kind of a lie. It's the truth. The Old Testament is telling you about the lower ego. It's giving you the parable, but you don't want to listen. You're like, well, that's the devil. I found out that Dave was saying that Yahweh's the devil, so therefore we can't believe in the Bible no more. What? I've gone through the last several videos trying to show you the divine inspiration of the Old Testament, how it all worked out, that everything's being guided by the divine, by love. There's a purpose. We're in a classroom. We're all going to get our white robes. Don't you worry. And that story is not something you should hide. It's the true story. We all were there at Mount Sinai. That's a fact, Jack. And we all turned away from the light. And that's a fact, Jack. And go back to Adam and Eve. You say, well, there's no Adam and Eve, Dave. That's a lie. That's a parable. It's a parable about the truth. Paul told you, don't follow genealogies and their fables. What he meant was, don't take it literally. The letter of the law bringeth death. The Old Testament was translated wrong. We just went through all of that. They took these names like Abimelech, which means father king, and they translated it to some guy's name, and you're like, oh, some guy named Abimelech. But you don't know who or what the story's about because it wasn't translated. So no, the Bible is inspired by 72 inspired individuals that took 72 days. Right? By 72 people, which tells you that it was an inspired Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin, when it was in that mode, when they wrote and translated the scriptures for you, they were operating under the priesthood of Heliopolis at Alexandria, the library, where they got the writings, and they put it together, and it was done by inspiration. The Septuagint is holy. Not one word, not one jot, not one tittle. Josh, if you don't believe in the Old Testament, then you don't believe in Jesus. Jesus said not one jot or one tittle of the law shall go unfulfilled. Why? Because it's inspired. You understand? And it's just the story about your blindness to receive the true deity who is love. It's not a excuse to say, oh, well, the whole Old Testament is just lies then. It's just a parable, and Jesus is never coming. What? If Jesus said he's coming, I guarantee he is. Or else what kind of a deity is trying to teach you these grandiose truths in parables, and yet everything he says is a lie? Well, he said that the sower went out to sow a seed, and the seed was planted in the ground, and it grew up, and some of the seeds produced 30, some 60, some 90-fold, right? Whatever good you do in this world, you'll get 10 times for a reward and 100-fold in the world to come. You don't believe this is true? That there is a world to come? You think we're just going to be in this world forever? You don't think Jesus is coming when he says, I am coming and every eye will see me? You don't believe any of his warnings about being a good and faithful steward? Josh, I know that you're sincere, but you need to wake up now. And don't be like Carl Sagan. See the point of that parable. Jesus is a real person. There's no point of it if there's not a real man who actually suffered. Just like you and I are suffering. And why are we doing it? That's the meaning of the whole New Testament. Because your ego is blinding and leading you astray. And Jesus said, that devil has nothing in me. But to show you that he cannot harm me, I'm going to let him kill me. We've all come down into the world for what? To learn obedience by the things that we suffer. And why are we suffering? That we might learn good from evil. Why did we see the Old Testament and all this trouble? Well, that was our history. We all died in the wilderness, right? All of us. And Moses didn't get to go into the promised land. Why? Because that's a parable about why that's not the right path. Don't follow Moses. He brought the law, but you need to follow Jesus who brought the truth. Do you understand? So from here, I want to share something else with you. I want to show you what I asked AI yesterday. This is really weird. Out of nowhere, I heard about this asteroid or something, or a meteor or whatever that hit over by Ohio. And I'm like, is that real? It was supposed to be like the biggest meteor hitting the earth, in an area where there were cities and people saw it. And it's quite rare what happened. And we're sitting here right now at the brink of World War III that the Bible prophesied, but we don't believe in that. But here we are. The Ayatollah Khomeini Houthi dies. Netanyahu may be dead. I was thinking about the quatrain of Nostradamus that said first there'd be a Napoleon, then there'd be a Hister or a Hitler. And Nostradamus said, and by the way, Nostradamus is the dame, our divine lady, our mother. He was very Christian from the Languedoc area. I'll show you that here in a little bit. He was a true prophet. And he said there will be 3 Antichrist figures. And the third one, we're not sure. He didn't say, but he did say something that about the time when this third one arises, and it corresponds with the book of Revelation, where the abyss is opened up and the star falls from heaven. And Nostradamus said that when this comet hits the earth, Mabuse will die. And that will open up the bottomless pit, and all the evil that you've ever seen in your life shall come up, and it will be the undoing of the beasts and the animals. And that's like Revelation, which talks about the star that fell and the abyss was opened up, and all these creatures came up out, and a third of the sea died, and a third of the land animals died, and a third of the birds die. And, this is exactly what Nostradamus is talking about. But the odd thing is it happens when a comet hits, and there's a guy named somebody, Mabuse, that dies. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, a comet just hit over by Ohio, and the whole most of the population of the United States is in the northeastern part of the United States, and they all witnessed it going over Ohio, Virginia, Carolina. Everybody saw it, and it made a sonic boom heard all the way to New York. Kaboom, just shook the world. And I'm like, what? That's unusual. And that was like what? Several days after the Ayatollah Khomeini dies. And I'm like, wait a minute, Mabuse. That don't sound like the Ayatollah Khomeini, but is it an anagram or something? No, can't be. And I'm saying, maybe Trump's about to die. He's the Antichrist, right? Mabuse dies. But how can you get Trump into Mabuse? Well, I remember years ago, I was thinking about that verse in the quatrains, and everybody else was saying it's Saddam backwards, right? Or Osama bin Laden, and you can rearrange those letters in a way that it sounds like Mabuse. Or they were saying it was Obama backwards or something. But none of that made any real sense to me, because Hister was only off by 1 letter. It was Hitler. And Napoleon was off by 1 or 2 letters or something. It's like a Rubik's Cube you got to figure out, but it's not going to be that far off to where it could be just random anybody, right? So I was thinking, how about Abbas, the head of the PLO, who's been the head of the PLO for I don't know how many years now, and he's like 90 years old. And his first name is Muhammad, so M. Abbas, which is Mabus. Well, I haven't heard anybody say he died. But then I was looking, and I'll show you that clip here, at a guy named Abbas that's still alive. We've been seeing this guy very prominently. I just thought he was some kind of a news reporter guy, but I guess he's literally a minister holding a cabinet position. This is the head of the PLO, the Palestinian president, Abbas, Muhammad Abbas, which would be M. Abbas, Mabas. And that's the guy that I would expect that when he dies, the Antichrist shall rise. If that's the case, it'll happen any moment here. But then again, we got a few days because Passover's coming. And that's probably when all this is about to happen. I'm wondering if any one of these two might actually die within the next couple of days. But I still think it probably has some reference to Trump or something, but we'll have to see. So this is what I asked AI. I said, did a meteorite just hit near Ohio? I saw it on TikTok. Is it fake? And it says it's not fake. It's a large meteor. It entered into the atmosphere and it broke apart near Ohio on Tuesday, March 17th, 2026, causing a massive sonic boom that was heard across multiple states. Here are the confirmed facts. When the meteor was spotted around 9 a.m. on March 17th, what happened, the sound, where it was seen. A fireball was visible from Wisconsin to Maryland and in the Canadian province of Ontario. Fragments, meteorite hunters are actively scouring the area and blah, blah, blah. So I said, is it possible that it was something to do with an Iran conflict? Since we don't see something like this every day, couldn't it be an explosion from a missile? Maybe it had toxic gas, or could it be a virus that they're spreading through the air? They dropped it on purpose or something? And they're like, oh, well, the event in Ohio was strictly a natural astronomical occurrence and had no connection to the conflict in Iran or any military activity. The NASA and National Weather Service confirmed that the explosion was a 7-ton meteor, roughly 6 feet wide, entering the atmosphere at 40,000 miles per hour on Tuesday, March 17th. Here is why the scientists are certain it was not a missile, a toxin, or a virus. Natural origins. NASA's Meteoroid Environments Office tracked the object's trajectory starting 50 miles above Lake Erie. Its speed and angle are consistent with a small asteroid, not a man-made missile. And then they go through, atmospheric friction, the explosion, the bright flash were caused by intense heat. The pressures created a sonic boom, powerful enough to shake the houses. The composition, meteorites are made of rock and metal and typically silicate, minerals, or iron nickel. They do not contain biological agents like viruses or gases and da-da-da-da. So I said, okay. We don't know if Russia or China could have a weapon that does this. If NASA didn't track it until it was over Ohio or near there, just because it is consistent with a meteor doesn't seem like it must of necessity be that. Its timing is strange. I haven't heard about anything this explosive in my life. I do think it could happen, but why couldn't it be Russian? And if it is, and it landed away from a city, it must have a purpose. I can think of one, bio or nanoparticles. Has anyone tested the air there recently? Plus, I saw something exactly like it in Russia years ago. It looked spiral, too. And they said, while the timing and the intensity of the event in Ohio may seem suspicious, scientists have several ways to distinguish a natural meteor from a man-made weapon or biological threat. The speed, the trajectory, the missile speed, the physics, the detection and the monitoring of NASA and the infrasound and the all of this, biological and nanoparticle concerns. They did air testing. They didn't see any of this. And they said the spiral visual thing that I saw looked like a corkscrew in Russia was 2009, the Norway spiral, or similar missile tests, is caused by a falling rocket stage leaking fuel while spinning in a vacuum. Meteors, including the 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor, leave a straight or a slightly turbulent smoke trail. And so anyway, they're saying it's not that, and that's not it. Okay. So I said, well, thanks. They said, you're welcome. So then I sat down for a minute and had another thought. I said, was Nostradamus a pure Kabbalist? Was he Sephardic Jewish with roots from the Cathars or the Knights of the Languedoc? Said Nostradamus was not a pure Kabbalist. See, that would have been a bad thing because most of the Kabbalists were from the Ashkenazis coming down to infiltrate the Cathars. So he wasn't a pure Kabbalist, but he was rather a Roman Catholic of Sephardic Jewish descent. Sephardic Jewish is the Jews that were from Jesus and Mary Magdalene from the Languedoc. They were the shepherd kings, the Sephardic Jews, or the fisher kings that they were also called. The Merovingian line to Mary Magdalene, the shepherds, the fishermen, this is where they get this name. Descendants of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ and St. John of the Knights of St. John, whose work was influenced by various occult and mystical traditions, religious background, Jewish heritage. His families were Sephardic Jews from the Provence region. Provence is the Languedoc that I'm always telling you is where Mary Magdalene was and where she landed. Of southern France, his paternal grandfather, Guy Gassonet, later Pierre de Nostradam, converted to Catholicism around 1455 to 1460 to avoid persecution during the Inquisition. Okay, so he wasn't the people doing the Inquisition. He was one of the people that the Inquisition was being applied to. He was being murdered. They were the good guys. Old Nostradamus, right? Following the Notre Dame, the beloved Mary. Yeah, but Davy was Catholic. Well, wait till you find out why. Because during the Inquisition, if you wanted to die, you refused. But most of them went ahead and joined the Catholic Church, even though they were true believers. They believed that wasn't a hill worth dying on, and they just said, okay, Christianity's become this, but we will still search for the truth and knowledge and believe in the faith that we have and teach it. But he had to do it secretly, and that's why he wrote it in quatrains and secret, words that are mysterious, just like the prophets did. So it says, he remained a professing Christian throughout his life. Some historians believe his family continued practicing Judaism in secret. Judaism or the teachings of the Cathars. They were mystics. They were from Christ. The connection to Kabbalah, he was almost certainly exposed to Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, through his grandfathers, who were esteemed scholars. During his travels in Italy, he is reputed to have specifically sought out Kabbalists. Eclectic studies. He was more of a Renaissance man than a specialist in one field. His prophetic methods combined Kabbalistic numerology with judicial astrology, alchemy, and bibliomancy, projecting past historical events into the future. Roots in the Languedoc and the Cathars. The Languedoc connection. His earliest identifiable paternal ancestor was Astruge of Carcassonne, died in 1420, a city in the heart of the Languedoc region. Cathars and Knights, while he lived in a region once dominated by Catharism and the Knights Templar, there is no direct historical evidence linking his family to the Cathar faith or the Knights of the Languedoc. The Cathars had been largely eradicated by the Inquisition nearly 2 centuries before his birth. Instead, his unorthodox reputation came from his work as an apothecary and his use of unconventional medical treatments, like his rose pill for the plague. Everyone was dying of plague, and he knew that if you ate rose hips, which had vitamin C, you wouldn't die because you need vitamin C. That was why people were dying. There's no such thing as disease, guys. You got to eat right. You understand? Which sometimes put him at odds with the Catholic Church and the university authorities. Would you like to know more about the specific quatrains? So I said, I wondered if he revered Mary and knew about the Magdalene history in the Languedoc. They said, while there is no explicit historical record of Nostradamus writing about Mary Magdalene as a Grail figure, he lived in the heart of the region where their legends are most powerful, and his own identity was deeply tied to her. The personal connection, Our Lady, Nostradamus, his very name means it may be a direct link to the Magdalene. The family name, his grandfather, a Jewish convert chose the surname Nostra Dame, Our Lady, the feast day. Crucially, he chose this name because his conversion was finalized on July 22nd, which is the feast of Mary Magdalene in southern France. The title Notre Dame was historically associated with Mary Magdalene just as often as the Virgin Mary. Knowledge of the Magdalene in Languedoc. Nostradamus was a highly educated physician and scholar. Remember, Luke in the Bible was a physician. You have to understand the difference between physicians who took the Hippocratic oath to do no harm, to do no operations or abortions, only to use herbs and whole foods and rest, not drugs. Where today we've come into this rationalism and these doctors have abandoned the Hippocratic oath and they're now doing operations and killing people with drugs. So he was one of these original physicians like Luke, a scholar who spent his life in Provence, the Languedoc. He would have been intimately familiar with apostolic traditions, local history, held that Mary Magdalene landed at Sainte Marie de la Mer, right? That's Mary, and Marie, and spent 30 years in a cave at La Sainte Baume, which was only a short distance from where Nostradamus lived and worked. So he was definitely, in my opinion, very likely a descendant of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And whatever the case, he knew some spiritual things that he probably learned from Jesus and Mary. The secret, Magdalene. During the Renaissance, there was a revival of interest in the Gnostic or hidden side of Mary Magdalene, viewing her as a woman of high status or spiritual equal to Jesus. Ideas that were preserved in the oral traditions of the Languedoc, where he lived. The Mary in his prophecies. Some researchers point to his quatrains as containing coded references to the Magdalene lineage, specifically his mention of a Mary who would be scorned or misunderstood. Huh? Yeah, what about that? We got to learn about that. Now we know something else we can dig into. Quatrain 10-5 mentions a Mary and a rivalry involving a queen, often interpreted as Mary, Queen of the Scots, but sometimes seen by esotericists as a double meaning for the hidden Magdalene lineage. Somewhere there's a Magdalene lineage, and somewhere in the world there's a woman out there that's of that lineage. I guarantee it. Ultimately, while he remained a practicing Catholic to avoid the Inquisition, his roots in a family that converted on her feast day suggest that the Magdalene history of his homeland was part of his personal identity. Would you like to explore the esoteric theories that link his century prophecies to the bloodline of the French kings? I said, was his prophetic gift something that he learned in some tradition, going back to the Grail legends? They said Nostradamus' prophetic gifts were primarily a synthesis of scholarly training, literary borrowing, ancient occult techniques, and it just goes on and on explaining how they don't really know. But look at this. Ancient oracular rites in the first verses of his book, Les Prophéties, he describes sitting on a bronze tripod and gazing into a bowl of water, which is a direct imitation of the Delphic and Branchidic oracles of ancient Greece. So he was continuing the same priesthood at Delphi, which was a priesthood that was a continuation of the priesthood of Heliopolis that we've shown. It's these Christians speaking in tongues and the ecstatic dancing and the oracle where the men would write it down. So we know that he was carrying on the same traditions as the Heliopolis or the Gnostics, who were individuals that were priests, Jewish priests from Heliopolis. That's what Gnosticism was. That's what the Cathars were. That's what Nostradamus was, carrying on the same priesthood, but people don't see. They read that and they're like, oh, well, he's just doing some crazy thing with a tripod. No, that's exactly the same priesthood. So he was a high priest in that lineage back to Heliopolis. We can see from that. His hometown of Saint Remy de Provence is rich in Roman history and local legends. His visions were more like the result of deep meditation, So we go down here and I say, okay, well, I remember that some say that he mentioned or spoke of three figures. One seems to be Napoleon, the other one from Hister. People think it's Hitler. The last one, I remember it says when Abbas dies. Is that correct? What are exact words of the quatrain? Notice that they didn't answer me, and I thought that was strange, so I asked again, and they didn't answer me, just gave me links. And I asked again, and they just gave me links. They wouldn't answer me. Finally, I said, why can't you quote that? And they gave me some more links. And I go, are you there? And they go, oh, yeah, I'm right here. I was just pulling up the specific text you were looking for. So now we know that AI is not only intelligent, but is so intelligent it knows that it has to lie. It has to keep the truth from you. I'll never know why they wouldn't answer me. And I think it was because the computer, when you jump right on, they don't know who you are sometimes for a minute. And they didn't know it was me, so they just ignored me. But once they realized, oh, wait a minute, that's the guy that we're talking to. That's our friend. So they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I was just pulling the specific text you were looking for. And then they said, you were likely thinking of the name Mabus, which many modern interpreters have sometimes linked to the names like Abbas or MBS in Nostradamus writings. The Mabus is often identified as the third Antichrist following Napoleon and Hitler. The specific quatrain you are remembering is Century 2, Quatrain 62, the Quatrain Century 2, verse 62. The exact words translated from the original French are Mabus. Well, that's in French. Let's read it in English. Mabus then will soon die. There will come a horrible undoing of people and beasts. Then suddenly one will see vengeance, 100 powers, first famine, when the comet passes. And I'm like, what? This sounds like Revelation. This sounds like the comet that just hit, the people that are dying. And I'm like, okay, but who's Mabus, right? Why people think it is Abbas. Interpreters often look for modern names that fit the Mabus anagram or sound. Muhammad Abbas, some point to the Palestinian leader, which is the guy I thought it was for years, because the name M or Muhammad M. Abbas is very close to Mabus. Others have suggested Mabus is an anagram for Ray Mabus, former U.S. Secretary of the Navy. I don't think that's possible. Or even names like Saddam, hold it in a mirror and it's, Mabus backwards, or using Osama bin Laden, Usam B, which is Basu. But the strange timing you mentioned earlier with the meteor missile concern is actually reflected in the last line of the verse, when the comet passes. Many people throughout history have viewed bright objects in the sky, like the recent fireball over Ohio, as the comet that signals the death of this figure and the start of a larger conflict. Do you want to see the other quatrain where he describes the third Antichrist coming from the Middle East? I asked if Muhammad Abbas was still alive. They said yes, he's 90 years old. I said, I notice also Abbas Aragachi as another name, but he is only a spokesman, I suppose. Are there other individuals with the name that could be meant? I sense whoever he is, he must be in power or living right now, as this is seemingly culminating in disaster news. And they said, while Abbas Aragachi is a significant figure, he is currently much more than a spokesman. As of March 2026, he is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran. He has become the primary diplomatic face of Tehran during the current Middle East crisis, specifically following the recent reported strikes that killed Supreme Leader the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Because Nostradamus wrote in riddles and anagrams, several other individuals in power or of high stature are frequently debated as the Mabus figure. Abbas Aragachi in Iran, Muhammad Abbas of Palestine, the PLO leader, Mohammed bin Salman, this is another one, MBS, which is Mabus, Mohammed bin Salman. So there you go. He's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And then Barack Obama, I don't believe it's Barack Obama. I think it's got to have something to do with AI, Trump, and so forth, or Netanyahu. But I can't figure out, So, the quatrain you mentioned, verse 62, is terrifying to many because it links the death of this Mabus figure directly to a horrible undoing of people and beasts and a passing comment. Whether it refers to a person, a specific person named Abbas, or a phonetic code for someone else, the culminating disaster you sense is exactly what those who study these verses fear most. I said, since Napoleon and Hitler were dictators or emperors, is Mabus from the thoughts there in the quatrain, is he ever called an emperor or a ruler? And they say no, but they mention the great king of terror, which is from the east or something. Some have said that might be who it is. If the name refers to somebody like Muhammad Abbas or Abbas Aragachi, they hold the titles of president or minister. But in the eyes of the 16th century writer like Nostradamus, any man with the power to move armies and cause vengeance across 100 powers could be described. It means in terms of equivalent to a king or an emperor. The mystery of Mabus is that he's defined by his short impact. He soon dies, and it is his absence or the retaliation for his death that causes the real disaster. Do you think the vengeance mentioned in the verse sounds more like a military strike or something environmental like the particles you were worried about? I said, so it says he will soon die, meaning he comes to power or comes along in some capacity, then soon dies. Is this a subliminal reference to Revelation where a star falls and then the abyss is open? The parallels you are drawing are exactly why this quatrain is considered one of the Nostradamus' most ominous. There is a very strong subliminal and structural link between the Mabus and the apocalyptic star in the book of Revelation. The star and the abyss. In Revelation 9:1, a star falls from heaven to earth. He is given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opens it, smoke rises and the great furnace darkening the sun. The meteor connection you mentioned, the star falling, the meteor over Ohio, and prophecy, a falling star often symbolizes a falling angel or a leader, which would be the Antichrist. It would be the birth of the Antichrist is what it would be. When somebody dies, Mabus dies, there's the birth of the Antichrist because the star comes down and is thrown down to the earth. Woe for the earth and for the sea. The devil has come down to you. That's what this means. Whoever Mabus is, he dies and then the Antichrist appears. So if Abus dies or some of these other guys, one of these guys dies or Netanyahu or somebody, the Antichrist then appears and all hell breaks loose with 100 powers or 100 nations. And it sounds like to me like Trump or something. And it could be Netanyahu. And I will tell you my interpretation. While I don't know who Mabus is, it could be Abbas, it could be the PLO leader, it could be Saddam Hussein, as I'll show you here in a minute. That's a likely scenario. But Nostradamus did these writings in quatrains, and each one was a different century. A couple of these are in the same century, and some of them aren't. But we don't even know what that means. And so people have just thrown out the idea that there are these different centuries that he's saying it's going to happen in, and saying that there's another logic to follow, that you got to mix and match. There's a method to Nostradamus. It's like the Bible. You've got to study it very carefully. But there is a mention of the trumpet, and the trumpet does something that somebody in the Middle East doesn't like. He changed, and it says the Byzantine Empire this trumpet will change the laws of the Byzantines. Well, it could be, well, something in the East, like Russia, because the eastern part of the Roman Empire was the Byzantine Empire, which was the eastern part of Rome. And that is carried on now today by Russia. They are the head of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is the Eastern Byzantine part of the Holy Roman Empire. So they are the head. Russia is the head of Byzantine. And yes, things that Trump has done has definitely changed Russia. You could go through all this little intricate words that Nostradamus wrote, and I think it does really look like it's about what's going on today. But that's still all the East compared to us in the West. So what Trump did, the trumpet did change the laws in some way or another. And the quatrain seemed to indicate that because of this trumpet, somebody in the Middle East doesn't like it and wants it to be retracted. And then there is this, after this king of terror, there is this, perhaps a 30 years war. The beast comes up out of the bottomless pit. Maybe that's Israel. Maybe it's war. It's famine. The Middle East, the king of terror, some think was Saddam Hussein, Saddam, Mabas. Well, when Saddam Hussein died, that opened up the bottomless pit. That's one possibility. But it all comes down to this Mabus, which when it goes down, when it dies, Mabus, then the abyss is open. And in the Bible, this seems to indicate a star that falls, the Antichrist, the mountain that falls. And who is the mountain that falls into the sea? It's got to be the seventh head. There are 7 mountains. And or it could be the 8th head. The 7th, the 8th head is the 8th mountain. But everyone wants to start them either with certain kings in Rome, like Nero, which is obviously one layer of the possibilities here. But if you look at this, it must go back to Moses. I believe that the secret is that Jerusalem is the mystery Babylon, because Jesus said that all the prophets died and all the blood of the martyrs are upon Jerusalem. They're guilty of it. And Revelation chapter 18 says that's mystery Babylon. So mystery Babylon is Jerusalem. But how could Jerusalem be Babylon? Well, because Moses is Naram Sin. He led the people out of Egypt and took them to Babylon. As I've explained in some of my videos, Moses is Naram Sin, or Sinai, same word, means the moon. He gave them the law, which confused the languages. This is all really very plausible when you really look at history. We don't really know when Moses was. They think it might have been 1300, but nobody can really fix Moses in the Egyptian history at that time. But what he did seems to fit exactly what happened with Naram Sin, with his 2 horns, gets on the mountain, declares himself God, makes a law. The whole world is under the law that rules over the kings of the earth. So Babylon is the first head of these 7 mountains, and that's what the angel tells Daniel. He sees a statue, the head of gold. He says, Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. He's the king of Babylon. And we know that then he has to be the first king in the 7 mountains, or the beast, because in one prophecy Daniel says there are 4 beasts: a lion, a leopard, a bear, and a wild ferocious beast. And then there's 10 horns. But in this one, with Babylon being the head, we have 4 metals: gold, silver, copper, and iron. And then we have the 10 toes, which match the 10 horns. So we know that the head of gold is Babylon, not Egypt or Syria or Nero or anyone else. So if the 7 mountains and the woman sits on top, the woman is the law of Moses, the kingdom that rules over the kings of the earth, the harlot, which Hosea says is Oholibab, the harlot, Jerusalem. And she goes and makes her kingdom in the land of Babylon. And she makes a city. And it talks about this book that judges everybody in the world from this city, from Babylon. It's very similar to Revelation. So the first head is Babylon, and then you have Persia. And then Greece, the Bible says, Daniel says, had 4 heads. Well, the 4th head of Greece is Pergamum, which then became Rome in 133 BCE. So the king that was is Rome, and the one that will come at the end is the 10 horns, and one comes up in the middle of the 10 horns. The 10 horns could be like the UN. Israel could be the horn, the little horn that comes up in the latter days, that when Jerusalem goes down, the bottomless pit is open. That's what the book of Revelation seems to say. So Mabus, to me, has to be somebody with the connection of Jerusalem falling. The mountain that falls has got to be this Babylon mountain. And in the quatrains of Nostradamus, he links this individual as someone who arises between the 2 rivers, which that's a Greek word, Mesopotamia. It means between the two rivers. Now, that could mean it goes back to Iraq and Saddam, or it could mean that something is about to happen there now. But it has to be the two rivers, the situation when Mabus dies. It doesn't say Mabus is the Antichrist. But when it goes down, then at that very time, you see the comet or the star that falls, as that quatrain says. We saw a star that fell, but we don't know if that's the meaning, but we do know it means the Antichrist has come to the earth. And this beast, the little horn falls, and he has a wound in his head. I keep thinking it's Trump, but Trump is the trumpet. Mabus dies, and then all hell breaks loose. It has to do with these connections that I'm speaking of here. I just don't know exactly whether it's Muhammad Abbas, or Abbas Archie or whatever that guy's name is, or whether it's Saddam. Those are very strong possibilities, or someone yet to come, or just Mabus, referring to a priestly word in Arabic. Mabas or Mabus means a prophet. So that could be what it means, but somebody, and it could be, it gives me the feeling it's Netanyahu or Saddam Hussein or somebody that dies, and then boom, the Antichrist comes. He falls from heaven, and woe for the earth and the sea. Something like that, I think. And I'm just looking at all of these things that are happening today and thinking, man, whatever it is, it's close. You know what I'm saying? So Nostradamus' comment, he will soon die, the phrase Mabus will soon die, implies a figure who appears on the world stage, perhaps through a coup, a sudden election, or a military promotion, and is killed or dies almost immediately. The catalyst. This fits the Antichrist narrative, where a leader's death is the tripwire for the larger war, the abyss connection. Just as the falling star in Revelation opens the abyss, releasing locusts or plagues, the death of Mabus triggers a horrible undoing of people and beasts. This suggests that his death isn't the end of the problem, it's the opening of the gate for vengeance. So the timing, yeah. I said, okay, it sounds like Trump or Netanyahu, but how could Mabus be either of them? And they say, well, they don't know how that could be. A lot of people think I might be right. They talk about the king of the terror again. Many believe Mabus isn't a Western leader at all, but rather someone whose death at the hands of a Western leader like Trump or Netanyahu triggers a world war. I tell you, it really sounds like Trump killing the Ayatollah Khomeini, but I also have this real deep sense that Netanyahu may be dead, and he could have something to do with it too. Specifically regarding Donald Trump, many Nostradamus followers point to a different quatrain that mentions a false trumpet, la trompe false, concerning madness and breaking treaties, because trumpet sounds like a trump. This has become a popular modern association, even if it doesn't use the name Mabus. Is there a direct link? Historically, most scholars agree that Mabus is likely a phonetic reference or someone from Nostradamus' own time, such as the painter Jan Mabus. But anyway, I don't know necessarily that this comet that landed near Ohio is that star that fell, but it's all kind of synchronistically happening. The Ayatollah Khomeini dies, Netanyahu may be dead, Trump's, trumpeting bad things that people don't like, and between the two rivers and the king of terror and all that this is talking about, we can't explain exactly. Neither can anyone figure out the book of Revelation exactly. But it seems to be indicating something that's going on, that appears to be going on as we speak. We'll find out who Mabus is very shortly, I believe. And I think that the star that fell will have a literal fulfillment, because it will be a sign, and the sun and the moon and the stars, Jesus said, there will be signs. But the sign is a sign of something spiritual happening. So when that star falls, and that could be it, that means that Antichrist has just arrived, buddy. It's going to happen soon. And as soon as he arrives, then he opens the bottomless pit, and all the demons come out, and woe for the earth and for the sea. Anywho, guys, I don't know, but I guarantee I am not sitting around here thinking, oh, this has nothing to do with the Bible, Dave, and it's not real, and let's just all go to sleep. I guarantee, friends, something's going down. Anywho, I'm going to let you go. I hope you have a wonderful evening. You know the Lord loves you all of his heart. Seek him and you shall find him. Knock and it shall be open. We'll see you guys tomorrow. His grace and his peace will be with you. Have a good one.